Life Stories is where we dive deep into real-life experiences that explore the complexities of family, love, and the lessons that shape us. Today's story is one of betrayal, empowerment, and a journey to reclaim control. Imagine being the responsible one in a family, always expected to help, only to find out your kindness has been exploited for years. This Thanksgiving, everything changes when one person decides they've had enough. Get ready for a roller coaster of emotions as this story unfolds. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to begin today's story. Thanksgiving had always been a special time in my family. A time for gratitude, family, and, most importantly, a chance to relax and reflect on everything we had been given. It was the one day of the year where we could gather together, enjoy a hearty meal, and share stories. But this year, everything changed. The warmth of the season, the laughter of my family, all of it vanished in the blink of an eye when my parents made a request that would change everything. I had worked tirelessly for years, doing everything I could to climb up the corporate ladder, balancing my responsibilities with the knowledge that I had no safety net to fall back on. I wasn't the golden child. That title belonged to my younger brother, Jake. He was the one my parents adored, the one they pampered, the one who could do no wrong. In contrast, I was the one who worked hard for everything. I didn't ask for much. I'd paid my way through college with scholarships and side jobs, worked long hours after graduation, and finally landed a job that paid me what I was worth. This year, after all the years of grinding and toiling, I was rewarded with my biggest bonus yet. It was the fruit of my hard work. I hadn't told my parents about the bonus, but somehow, they found out. Maybe it was the excitement that lit up their eyes when they spoke to me. It had to have been, because it was out of nowhere. The Thanksgiving dinner table was filled with laughter, small talk, and the clinking of plates. It was supposed to be another pleasant evening. But then, my mom spoke up, that sweet, syrupy voice she always used when she was about to ask for something. I could feel it in my gut. Something wasn't right. So, we were thinking, she began. My father exchanged a glance with her, and I knew something was coming. She continued, since you got that big bonus this year, we figured it would be really helpful if you gave it to Jake. He's been struggling so much lately. I blinked. I genuinely thought she was joking. I chuckled awkwardly, thinking it was a bad attempt at humor. That's funny, I said, trying to play it off. But then I leaned in with a smirk and added, I have a surprise for you too. Their faces lit up for a moment, and I could tell they thought I was about to do something generous. Perhaps even give them some of my hard-earned money. I opened my laptop slowly, feeling a sense of satisfaction as I clicked on the folder I had spent months putting together. A sense of power surged within me as I turned the screen toward them. My parents, frozen in silence, didn't know what hit them. Their smiles vanished. My brother, who had been smugly sitting there, suddenly looked like a deer caught in the headlights. What they didn't know was that I had been keeping track for years. Every single time they asked me for money, every loan they borrowed and never paid back, every time they expected me to be the responsible one, I kept a record. The little things that added up over the years, things they thought I would just forget. I had watched as my brother was bailed out time and time again, while I was left to handle the difficult situations that came my way. I had always been the one expected to pull through. My parents had never once asked how I was doing, never once cared to ask about my struggles. It was always about Jake and his latest emergency. But that wasn't the worst part. No, the worst part was that I had something bigger, something they would never have expected. Something that would make sure they'd never ask me for anything again. I took a deep breath, leaned back in my chair, and let the silence linger for a moment. The tension was thick, and I could feel the weight of their expectant eyes on me. I hope you're ready for this, I said slowly, savoring the moment. My mom's hand trembled as she reached for her wine glass. My dad didn't say a word, but his jaw clenched so tightly that I could practically hear his teeth grinding. Jake, on the other hand, had already started shifting uncomfortably in his seat. His eyes darted around the room, clearly looking for an escape. I let the silence stretch on, letting them sweat it out. Then I tapped the screen, revealing the first set of documents. This, I said coldly, is every single bank transfer I've ever made to you. Every loan that was never paid back. Every emergency bill you couldn't cover because Jake needed help. I scrolled down, and the numbers piled up. Thousands, tens of thousands. It was all there, neatly documented. My mom tried to speak, but I raised my hand. I'm not done yet, I said. I clicked over to the next file, feeling the adrenaline surge within me. This, I said with steady control, is Jake's credit card history. Jake sucked in a sharp breath, his face going pale. He had no idea I had access to his credit card statements. He had no clue that while my parents were begging me for money, he was out partying, blowing cash on expensive vacations, new sneakers, and nights at the club. I had it all. Screenshots of Instagram posts where he flaunted bottles of champagne at high-end clubs. Trips to Miami, Las Vegas, and Mexico. There was even a photo of him standing next to a brand new gaming setup that cost more than my monthly rent. Is this true? My mom whispered, her voice shaking. Jake scoffed and tried to brush it off. It's not that serious, he muttered, but I could see the panic creeping in behind his eyes. I laughed bitterly. Oh, but it is. I clicked on the final file. This was the one that would truly make their jaws drop. This was the one that would leave them speechless. This, I said, my voice cold and unwavering, is the record of the mortgage payments I've made on this house. The one you told me was already paid off. My mom's face drained of color. My dad let out a slow breath, gripping the table as if he were about to flip it over in rage. And Jake? He didn't know what to do with himself. His smug expression faded into shock. About a year ago, my parents had come to me, tears in their eyes, telling me they were about to lose the house. They begged me for help, promised me it was just a temporary setback. They swore that they needed just a little bit to get back on their feet. I was hesitant, but I didn't want to see them homeless. So I helped. I paid without question. But something didn't sit right with me. I dug deeper, and what I discovered shattered me. The house was never in danger. The money I'd sent to help had gone somewhere else, straight into Jake's pockets. My parents had used my help to fund his lifestyle of excess. I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms, letting the weight of the moment settle in. So tell me again, I said slowly, why exactly should I give him my bonus? The room was silent. Not a single person spoke. I could hear the ticking of the clock in the kitchen. And I realized, for the first time in my life, I had the power. For once, I wasn't the one getting the short end of the stick. The silence in the room was suffocating. I could feel the weight of their gazes, their disbelief, their anger, but this time, it wasn't directed at me. It was directed at themselves. My mother's face crumpled, and my father's hands gripped the table with such force that his knuckles turned white. I had never seen them like this before, vulnerable, exposed, and unable to hide behind their usual masks. But instead of feeling triumphant, I felt an overwhelming sense of emptiness. All of the years of manipulation, of giving without being asked, of being the responsible one while Jake was allowed to skate by, had finally come to a head. And yet, nothing felt as sweet as I thought it would. Jake, ever the master of deflection, was the first to break the silence. He shifted uncomfortably in his chair, his eyes darting around the room, clearly searching for a way out. You went behind our backs, he muttered, his voice low but laced with venom. I didn't flinch. I went behind your backs? I've been paying for your mistakes for years. I shot back. You think this is just about money? You've been lying to me, manipulating me, and treating me like the responsible one who never deserves a break. Jake's expression twisted with frustration. You're making a big deal out of nothing. It's just money, he spat, his voice rising. Oh, it's more than just money, I said with a bitter laugh. It's about respect. It's about dignity. It's about all the years you used me as your safety net while letting him do whatever he wanted. I pointed at Jake, my finger trembling with anger. You wanted me to bail you out. To be the good child. But for once, I'm not the one paying the price. My father finally spoke, his voice low and dangerous. A tone I had only ever heard in moments of great tension. "What else could there possibly be?" he asked, his eyes narrowing. I clicked on another file, and my parents' expressions shifted from shock to horror. I could almost feel their hearts race as they realized how deep the web of lies had stretched. "This," I said, "is the record of all the times you came to me, claiming you needed money to cover bills, to keep your house. The house you told me was already paid off." I scrolled through the pages, showing them every transaction, every payment. This is where the money went, straight into Jake's hands. His vacations, his parties, his nights out. This is where my money went. And yet, you still expect me to give him more. You want me to help him while you continue to feed his entitlement? Why should I? For a moment, I thought they would snap. My father looked like he was about to stand up and shout at me. But then I saw something in his eyes, fear. Real fear. Fear of being caught. Fear of the consequences. And, for once, it wasn't me who was afraid. Jake slammed his hand down on the table, his face red with anger. "I'm not a loser," he yelled, his voice rising. "You think you're so much better than me, don't you? Just because you've got a boring office job? You think that makes you more deserving?" I stared at him, my heart pounding in my chest. But I didn't back down. "Yes," I said, my voice cold and steady. "It does. Because I earned it. I worked for every single cent. And I've watched you squander everything you've been given." For a moment, the room was quiet again. But the tension was palpable. I could see the battle raging inside my father's mind. Should he fight back or try to make peace? Should he continue to protect Jake, even at the cost of losing me? My mom, tears streaming down her face, reached out to me. Her voice was soft, pleading, but I could hear the desperation in her words. "You don't understand, sweetheart. He's not as strong as you. He wouldn't survive without us." I yanked my arm away from her grasp, refusing to let the guilt and sympathy cloud my judgment. "No," I said, shaking my head. "You don't understand. I'm the one who has been carrying all of you for years. I've been the one who never got the help, who never got the praise. You've let me struggle, while you've made sure Jake never had to face any consequences." I could see Jake's face twist with anger. But there was something else beneath it, a flicker of doubt. He wasn't used to being confronted like this. He wasn't used to me standing up for myself. Not when he had always been able to manipulate my parents into doing his bidding. But it wasn't just him anymore. It was them too. And for the first time, I realized that I didn't owe them anything. The years of sacrifice, the emotional labor I had put into this family, had been for nothing. They had used me, taken me for granted, and now, they expected me to give more. It was time to put a stop to it. But before I could speak again, Jake pulled out his phone, tapping away quickly. "I guess it's time for my surprise," he said, his voice dripping with malicious intent. I had a bad feeling creeping up my spine. But I stayed silent, waiting for him to reveal whatever trick he thought he had up his sleeve. I watched as he turned the screen of his phone toward me. My stomach dropped. There, on his phone, was an email, an official one, from my company's HR department. The subject line read, "Allegation of financial misconduct." My heart stopped. "What is this?" I whispered, my voice shaking. Jake's grin widened as he looked at me with pure satisfaction. "See? You're not the only one planning ahead. I knew this day would come." I stared at the email, my mind racing. It was a setup. A goddamn setup. My worst nightmare. If my company took this seriously, it could destroy my career. It could take everything I had worked for. And I knew, deep down, that my parents had helped him. They had enabled him. They had let him play this game while I was the one who had to pay the price. They had no idea how far I was willing to go to protect myself. The calm before the storm was over. The battle lines had been drawn. And this was only the beginning. The silence that followed was unlike anything I had ever felt before. My heart was racing, my mind spinning, as I tried to comprehend the sheer audacity of Jake's move. But in that moment, I realized something. It didn't matter what he did. Or what my parents did. They had pushed me to the edge. And now I had to stand my ground. I slowly closed my laptop. My hands steady despite the chaos swirling inside me. Nice try, Jake, I said with a calm I didn't know I had. But you didn't actually send this complaint yet. Did you? He froze. For the first time, I could see the uncertainty creeping into his face. What do you mean? He stammered. I leaned in with a smile. The adrenaline pumping through my veins. I know you haven't sent it. It's still in draft mode. I raised an eyebrow as his eyes darted nervously between me and his phone. Go ahead. Send it. I dare you. Jake's confidence faltered, and he quickly swiped his phone away, trying to regain control of the situation. But I could see it, his fear. He had underestimated me, and now he was beginning to understand the depth of his mistake. Do you really think I'm afraid of you? I asked, leaning back. I've got lawyers, Jake. If you send that complaint, I'll sue you for defamation, for corporate fraud, for everything. And don't forget, I've got proof of what you and our parents have been doing. I'll make sure the IRS knows everything about your little games. The weight of my words hung in the air. There was no escaping this now. This wasn't a fight they could win. With a final, cold glance at my parents, I turned to leave. This ends now, I said, my voice unwavering. You'll never ask me for anything again. As I stepped outside into the crisp night air, I felt lighter than I had in years. For the first time, I was free. Free from the manipulation, the lies, and the toxic family dynamic. And as I walked away, I knew I had taken back control of my life. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe to our channel to stay updated on new life stories.